Star Ocean 2 is a funny franchise when you've considered the modern Square Enix. As it's undeniably well known with a considerable fan base, as a brand it still sits under a space well under their biggest franchises such as Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, yet far above titles like the recent Voice of Cards series and many Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest related spin-offs. It's strange, though the sales haven't been truly great for the series in a while, if they ever were, they've thankfully improved with the Star Ocean 2 remake being fully multi-platform. Sales have picked up. Despite this, the game is very niche and definitely should be played by more people. Star Ocean 2, the second story R, is genuinely a great game. I loved it. It's not perfect though, and it has a lot of imperfections, a whole list in fact. But that never changed my view of the game. What's funniest though is, even after finishing it for my first playthrough months ago, I'm not done with the world, and I truly want to go back to it. Prior to playing Star Ocean 2's remake, I had no experience in the franchise. I'd never bought a copy of a game in the series aside from Star Ocean Till the End of Time on the PlayStation 2. I bought that one a long time ago, and turns out I bought 2 copies. But I never played the game. I've always heard of Star Ocean, but never felt the need to jump in. This all changed when Star Ocean 2 was announced to have a remake. I was watching a Nintendo Direct, I believe, and suddenly a new HD 2D game was revealed. I didn't know what it was, but everything looked beautiful. Star Ocean the Second Story Art has the most incredible visuals in the HD 2D substyle aside from Live Alive, and I was impressed, especially after I heard the praise for the game. Eventually, I heard YouTubers talk about how this remake would be the chance for Square Enix to course correct from previous titles in the series, a way for them to get back on track after multiple missteps. Star Ocean 2 is to many the best one in the series, so if Square Enix really wanted to lock in and get back to the heart of the franchise, this was their perfect chance to do so. After all, sales haven't been terrible, but they haven't been good for a long time either. Here's what I'll say though, if this is the course correction, then I hope they correct it. Star Ocean 2 is amazing. Simply put, it's a good game made great. Now here's why. The first aspect about Star Ocean the Second Story that is worth talking about is its story. While simple, you can't help but love it. Star Ocean 2 has this grounded story despite being a fantasy JRPG and then a sci-fi JRPG. I played as Claude for my playthrough, so take note while listening because the story changes depending on all sorts of choices. Spoiler alert ahead. Skip to the exact timestamp on screen to avoid practically the full spoilers for the story. I summarized the point to get across. I started out by being transferred to a different planet, seemingly in a different time period, and was rescued by a girl named Reina. She took you to her village, and everything continues from there. Claude then gets roped into a quest to save the world. Only he, as someone from a different planet, different world, could save Reina's, and early on he already has a motive. Claude liked Reina and vice versa. He also wanted away off the planet and back to his father. Early on, the motivation for 2 characters were set up. Things continue from there. You have side quests and get sidetracked, gain companions, and eventually a king will task you with figuring out what caused all the havoc in town, and Claude obviously accepts as he figured it would be the best way to find his way back home, once again. You meet more companions and get to know Reina and other friends better and keep getting sidetracked. You fight Diaz, who is figuratively Reina's brother. Your party helps the town fight back against monsters, and after a really long puzzle, eventually you're where you need to be. Your party uncovers a plot to destroy the world by these guys called the 10 Wise Men. They plan to crash this planet, expel into their home need, killing everyone here, and you're here to stop them. One of them easily defeats you, and so they crash the planet into need, teleport off, and you get teleported with them. Your plan and your quest to return to your father is put on delay yet again. On Energy Need, you do a bunch more side quests, get stronger, get new weapons, and get a Signar, this game's equivalent to Final Fantasy's airships. You train. Finally, you're strong enough to take on the 10 Wise Men, so you slowly pick them off, do a really boring puzzle, but grind a ton of XP, pick more off, and defeat the final one. You return to Expel that's been reborn, but your father passed away during a cutscene from these 10 Wise Men shooting his ship out of the sky. Everything in Expel is back to normal. You've saved this world and galaxy from certain destruction, but you didn't save your father or your family. It's really cool though, but not nearly as impressive as modern JRPGs, and that's okay. It's great in fact. The story is just as enjoyable as many of the popular Square Enix JRPGs from the PlayStation 1 era. The story isn't much of a story though, it's extremely linear, retroactively tropey, and nothing close to deep nor complex. But this doesn't matter. The story here is more of a vehicle, and its main purpose is to get the player to fall in love with the world, gameplay, and most importantly the characters, and you do, you fall in love with them all. The world of Star Ocean the Second Story is really unique. In the first half of the game, you're basically on a planet set in the medieval time period, without any real technology, similar to your traditional fantasy RPG. Claude and Reina contrast with this world due to their respective powers. On Expel, the game is a fantasy JRPG akin to Dragon Quest. Expel represents Disc 1 of the game when you're playing on the PS1, so the drastic shift in location would really be felt by players. Disc 2, or the other half of the game, takes place on Need, or Energy Need, which is also Reyna's home planet. This part of the game is much more stereotypical sci-fi, with giant alien creatures, force fields, and Claude can finally regain access to his gun. There's floating planets and more. The contrast between Expel and Need couldn't be more stark. Reyna and Claude are also much more at home in this world. On Energy Need, you have no longer a need to travel on foot, and thus can quickly get from destination to destination with a Synard, making this half of the game feel even higher tech. The world of Star Ocean 2 is incredible. It's better than good in countless ways. For example, the way typical JRPG elements are tied into the different worlds here are masterful. In Final Fantasy, you gain access to an airship because it was needed for the story. In Star Ocean 2, you get yours because it's the only possible way to use it in this world. It's great. Your airship isn't an airship, it's a creature you tame. I was originally going to compare Star Ocean the Second Story Arc to the Tales of series, specifically Tales of Vesperia, as it's the only one I've played, and I'll still do that slightly. What shocked me, however, was how many people already compared the series to Tales of, so in a sense, at least on this front, I'm not a fish out of water. I'll say this firstly, I grew tired of Tales of Vesperia's combat as soon as it became slightly difficult. I never grew tired of Star Ocean 2's. Granted, the combat is very similar between the two, Star Ocean's just feels more intense. Maybe it's because of the stakes of Star Ocean 2, but I never became bored, even while grinding XP for the final boss fight. Star Ocean 2's combat is extremely customizable. You're given a breadth of attacks. You can increase how many hits are in a combo with extra accessories. You can string combos together almost into infinity. At a basic level, Claude has a 4-hit combo. You also gain the ability to use special moves on a cooldown with the D-pad or directional buttons. When your party grows past 4, these cool down via hits to enemies, and you work to deal high damage along with continuing a combo. Aside from basic combos, the D-pad mapped party attacks, you also can equip 2 MP powered moves to L and R. The first goes on the first button press, and the second falls on the second button press. Combat gives you the ability to sidestep or dodge, but it's almost never worth it. You'll often get hit, and if you mess up the dodge, you're staggered or stunned, and constantly bombarded by attacks from multiple enemies. Eventually, with basic combos, L and R specials, and other special attacks and D-pad moves, you can keep combos going until you're hit, run out of charge on the D-pad, or run out of MP. Combat is incredibly fleshed out, and is by far the most enjoyable aspect of the game. Not everyone plays games for their music, I don't really either. Outside of Nier or Final Fantasy, maybe Zelda, I'm not a gaming music guy. However, the music here is pretty good. Nothing is catchy, but there's also nothing that you'll grow tired of hearing over and over again. With the exception of battle themes, of course, depending on how much grinding you're doing. Audio-wise, Star Ocean 2 is also decent. Weapon attacks sound awesome, especially killer moves. There's a very real crunchiness to characters' sword slashes and magic spells. The voice acting here is similarly good. There are, however, a few characters that sound annoying, while others who might have had an annoying archetype completely avoid the stereotypes. Claude and Reyna, in particular, are greatly acted. Sometimes the writing doesn't stack up to the acting, though, so you have moments where Claude says "D is funny," or screams at a bad guy in a strange tone. Outside of those instances, there's very real emotion behind Claude and Reyna. Even other party members. There's a specific private action between Claude and Priestess. Private actions are this game's supports, where after Expel had been destroyed, everyone was sad and Priestess was stayed joyful. She spoke super honestly with Claude about why. The voice acting in this moment was one of the most touching aspects of the game I ever seen. On characters in Star Ocean 2, the best part about the game are the characters. I'd go so far as to say it's the most incredible, even great aspect of the game. On my playthrough, I only had 5 party members, Claude and Reyna, who are the defaults, as well as Ashton, Celine, and Priestess. All 5 were fleshed out, and all had amazing moments. If you want a reason to play or replay Star Ocean 2, let the reason be because of its characters. The struggles of Claude and Reyna, 2 foreign entities or aliens on a mysterious planet, the story of Ashton with Creepy and Weepy on his soldiers, Celine and her family, along with Priestess and her dad. I didn't add Leon to my party, but his story from the glimpses of what I saw was touching too. Claude and Reyna share such a human connection. The writing was masterful. Earlier I said Star Ocean 2's story was a vehicle to get you to fall in love with the characters, and this is why. Ashton might have been kind of goofy. You're directly responsible for these 2 crazy dragons being attached to him, but that little side quest where everyone says how cruel it is to purge the dragons, which leads to Ashton keeping them and joining your party, was simply masterful. The side quest where Celine joins your party to find treasure and you have to discover a secret room, also masterful and fun. Taking Leon into this terrible cave to find these rare minerals, when you're done, Leon is gloating about how he could have done it all by himself, masterful again. How Priestess wanted to join after Claude became interested in a robot toy, really wholesome. Somehow these pixelated characters had some of the most human characters I've seen in games in a long time, with the most touching and human moments at that. The humanity of these characters goes above the simple goodness of the game and into greatness, matched by so few titles. Are there better, more realistic characters in gaming? Of course, but something about Star Ocean 2 worked for me, in a way games haven't recently. Outside of Final Fantasy XVI, of course, and at the time of writing, anything else I'd played this year. Take the context of its initial release, a PlayStation 1 era JRPG, and it's even more impressive. Star Ocean 2, by contrast to the time period, the characters feel real, like a glimpse into characters from a different reality. The voice acting of the remake with a lighthearted story certainly helps as an advantage. In countless ways, Star Ocean 2 is a good game. When I wrote about Fire Emblem Three Houses, I called it an imperfect game made perfect by our experiences, and I stand by that. Star Ocean 2, however, is a good game made up of endless greatness. It's a good game made great in my opinion. I love the characters of Expel and Need. You spend so much time with them, yet it goes by so quickly. It leads you to feel that you've hardly spent time with them at all. It felt depressing to me when it was all said and done. I barely got to know Ashton, Celine, Priestess, and the others I didn't recruit, despite getting pretty far in the private actions and supports with them. There's more to this world than meets the eye, and I hope if you've made it this far, you go it and buy it, or replay it, or take it out of your backlog and just give it a shot. It will hook you. Anyways, I want to thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far as well in the video. As always, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. It means the world to me that you'd watch this far. If you want to hear more of me, check out some of the other videos I made, the two on screen I'm quite fond of. I made this video working on another bigger upload about Life is Strange, but I've had it in my backlog of reviews for a while, and now felt like the perfect time to finally record, edit, and upload it. I really love Star Ocean the second story arc, and if you haven't played it, I think you will too. Once again, thank you, and I hope you have an amazing day.